The Joint Administration and Matriculation Board, Jamb, has adopted the minimum cutoff marks sent by tertiary institutions for the 2021 admissions. Now, this means that there will be no uniform cutoff marks for the 2021 to 2022 admissions. Now, Jamb Registrar, Professor Isak Oleyede, displayed the minimal cutoff marks adopted by tertiary institutions at the stakeholders meeting on the 2021 policy on admission in Abuja. Now, he revealed that specific universities, such as University of Maiduguri, proposed 150, Usman Dan Fodio University, Sokoto, proposed 140, Pan Atlantic University proposed 210, and University of Lagos, 200, Lagos State University, 190, Covenant University, 190, Bayero University in Kano, 180. Now, this is according to a new arrangement. The universities are not allowed to go below 120, and polytechnics and colleges of education, 100 for admission. They also agreed to the total fee for post-unified tertiary matriculation examination fee. It should not be more than 2,000 naira. To try to situate this development properly for us as we reappraise the desirability or otherwise of Jamb as an institution, we are now being joined by Yomi Edu, a former Minister of Special Duties and Commerce. Welcome. Welcome, sir. What do we make of these new developments, and what created the necessity for these to be enacted, especially now?
Oh, good afternoon. Thanks for inviting me. Yomi FAWEHINMI is my name. I'm not a former minister. Okay, so it's good for us to situate the conversation historically. Jamb came to be as a government establishment over some decades back. Before then, what was a practice was that each child who wanted to go to a University of Ibadan, University of Lagos, or wheresoever, would go to his schools and pursue the admission process. And the military government at that point felt that it was wise to situate in a single body the admission. So that's where the name is joint admission. Before then, it was individual universities that were doing the admission. So the idea was, let's create a body to do a joint admission. So it's that body that provides admission, a common admission platform. So I don't need to go and buy form for University of Ibadan and then University of Lagos and UNN. I just buy one form with Jamb and I can get access to that university. However, when that was done, what was not done was to change the laws of the universities, because the laws of the universities says that the Senate of the university has responsibility for admission criteria setting. So what happened was that we had laws of UI, Unilag, and those universities that already gave that responsibility to the Senate of the university. We created a decree that gave this joint body that similar responsibility. And of course, initially there was some pushback, and some schools felt, oh, you're usurping the responsibility of the Senate, but it was the military. Hey, you don't talk to the military. Now, that is what has happened over the years. And then we came to the point where, what the military tried to do to balance it was to ensure that it was only professors and academics that headed Jamb that understood it. And they continued with that till when they came with the current CEO, who just got a second term, who was a former vice chancellor of the University of Ilorin, who seems to have shown more capacity to understand the balance between the role of Jamb and the role of the university, and has always reinforced the responsibility of the University Senate as the admission agency for each university, but only showing that Jamb is just like a platform to do that. So that's like the historical context of how Jamb came to be. And then every year before now, it was almost like fear that Jamb would just fix a mark as a minimum mark. But one of the innovations brought by the current CEO is to say, hey guys, Jamb should not fix a mark for universities and higher institutions. Let's call everybody together and agree on a common one. And that's what led to this policy dialogue that happens every year where they fix the cutoff mark. Remember, and it's very, very important that the universities are not the only ones that write There are over 600 institutions that rely on Jamb for admission. universities, Polytechnic College of Education, specialized institution, monotechnics, and all of that. So that's what got us here. Now, the biggest difference for the session that I held last year was that as against the previous year, there was always a minimum cutoff mark for universities, for polytechnics, and for college of education, and then for the innovation centers. But this last minute, it was decided that there wouldn't be. It's just a question of each school will set its own cutoff mark. It's new, it's different, it's peculiar. It's also ridiculous the reason why Jamb gave for doing that, saying, oh, okay, University of Lagos said they wanted 190, University of Maiduguri said it wanted 150, Covenant University said it wanted 190. That has always been the case. In the last 5 years, when this means that each university comes there with its own suggested cutoff mark and they're able to agree. So when Jamb says the reason why there is no uniform minimum cutoff mark is because university have, that has always been the case. But that is why your name is joint. So your role is to provide that leadership and provide a platform for that uniformity at a minimum. And I think Jamb lost an opportunity to reinforce why that joint is in his name. So maybe we should stop calling them Jamb. They actually should become Hamp now, because they don't want to play that role of providing that joint common platform for us to have a minimum standard. What is going to happen is there are two things that is important with this decision. Number one, this decision reinforces the power of the Senate of the university, which is good for university autonomy as expected by all world-class institutions. So there's a part of it that is good. But at the same time, there's also the part of it that we need to be very conscious of the fact that that means some universities would lower the mark so much that people who should not be in those schools will get into those schools.
Okay. Yeah.
And that's the challenge that we have to deal with. Today, last year, people that scored 120, that scored 100, will be able, out of 400, were able to get admissions to College of Education to go and teach our children and become teachers. Somebody who scored 100 over 400, that's 25%, is allowed to come and do an NC program and goes to teach your child or my child. Now, with what has happened, potentially somebody that scored 50 can be allowed to do that. In some schools, somebody that scored 70 over 400 may potentially be allowed to come and study medicine. And that's a challenge, and that's why Jamb should have insisted on a minimum standard and ensure that those institutions abide with it. But what I can predict and bet to you is that you're going to hear some people will gain admission with such low marks that you wonder what they are doing in those institutions.
Mr. FAWEHINMI, we were wondering what this means for our education system, lowering this bar like this, especially since we know we have quite a few challenges with the education system as it exists currently.
No, when you said education system, Nigeria does not have an education system. You know, a system is different parts working together to achieve one purpose. So you have, for example, a digestive system. Your digestion has various organs that are working together to achieve one purpose. Nigeria does not have an education system because the various parts are not working for the same purpose. So as we currently speak, between Jamb, WAEC, and NECO, they cannot even agree to the day to do exam. There will not be clashes. So something as simple as timetable, common timetable to say NECO is a Nigerian organization, reports to the Minister for Education. Jamb is a Nigerian, it's not WAEC. I'm not talking about WAEC now, that is West Africa. Two of them had clashes in terms of timetable. When you cannot have a common purpose around timetable, how do you say there's no system? That's the first thing.
Mr. FAWEHINMI, please go ahead, land your point.
Secondly, a system will only be a system because it has a unified purpose. We do not have a unified purpose for education in Nigeria because it's possible. So, you know, in Nigeria, for example, there are schools that boast that they teach British curriculum. There are schools that boast they teach American curriculum. Then there are schools that teach Nigerian curriculum. That is an evidence of a lack of a system. An educational system teaches one curriculum. You can't go to the US or go to England and say you want to be teaching Akure curriculum or Yoruba curriculum. Okay. No, they're not going to allow.
Mr. FAWEHINMI, let me come in at this point. It's curious that you said they should no longer be called Jamb, but Hamb. I don't know what the H would stand for under the new acronym. But anyway, do you not see a way of finding a middle ground when it comes to, because I think what the education systems are striving for is autonomy. I know in some institutions abroad where you have a common cutoff mark for universities, they still have their entrance exam so they can sift the kind of candidates they want. Could this not be something we apply in Nigeria?
Yeah, but thanks for that very important question. The entrance exams, the post-UME will still happen. You see, we need to always situate our issues in our context, right? Now, I agree with the responsibility of a university to select a student. It's what is expected of any great institution. That's what happens all over the world. What I don't agree is that how does that fit into our situation? So let me use data to help drive this conversation. 3 years ago, I mean, the university that gets the greatest number of applications in Nigeria is the University of Ilorin. It has excess of 70,000 applying to that school, and it has been the first in the last 5 years. University of Ilorin is the first. However, in the last 2 years, Nigeria has approved excess of 15 new private universities. 3 years ago, while University of Ilorin had over 70,000 applicants, there was a university in Ogun State that had 10 applicants. Now, I didn't say 10 people that passed Jamb, as in 10 people that applied. A whole university, only 10 people applied. Now, when you have that kind of scenario where there's a University of Ilorin that has 70,000, and then you have that same system where you have a university that had only 10 people applying, my question you need to ask yourself is that, don't you see a commonality on the need to have a minimum standard? Because what will that school do? That school will need to pay its bills. So what will that school do when it has only 10 applicants? What it's going to likely do is just take all the 10, whatever they score. Now, you have given those kind of schools the license to do anything they like. And that's a challenge. Those new private universities, I think it was the last batch was either 20 that we did. Nobody applied for them at the point they were writing Jamb. They need to admit students. So what will they likely do to attract students? Remember, for the private university, there's school fees to be paid. The only thing you can do to attract them is to lower the cut-off mark. And that's a challenge. That's a big challenge in the sense that that's not what you have in other places. Because when you gave the example of the US, everybody who attends university in the US, whether you went to a state university or you went to a government university or you went to a private university, you had access to student loans. So finances is not your major determinant of which school you will go to. It may be status or the quality of education or reputation of the school. But in Nigeria, where cost is an issue, what therefore happens is that for any school that charges fee, it can choose to trade off that fee for no mark. I mean, and it's already happening. Look at the current status of Nigerian university that have a pre-degree program for medicine. The school fees of pre-degree program for medicine is higher than the school fees for medicine. The only reason is that the university entirely determines who comes on that program.
Mr. FAWEHINMI,
So that's the balance.
You're raising some very salient points. I just want to come in and ask, because you're talking about access to finance. You're actually tracing some of the discordant standards to access to finance, which is right. But are you right to dump this on the desk of Jamb? Should it not be a matter for the Minister of Education?
Your name is Jamb, Joint Admission and Matriculation Board. So the responsibility for admission lies with you. So that's why we should dump it there. But you are very right. We should talk to the Ministry of Education. We have a federal minister for education. We have a minister of state for education. And, you know, one very good thing that the present administration has done is the fact that this minister for education may be the longest standing minister of education we have had since independence. The average, I did an analysis, which I think I published some time back. I did analysis, the average minister for education spends less than 18 months as a minister, which is one of our issues, right? The average spent 18 months. But we have this man that has been on the saddle for excess of 4 years. And so should have learned. But what I've come to realize is that the minister and the Ministry of Education is not providing that leadership. It's not providing that galvanizing capacity to take education to where it should be. I mean, you guys, your station just announced that ministers were removed, and you seem to suggest that it was due to poor performance.
Yes.
And the question to ask is that the person that made the announcement, I'm not sure, said it's because of poor performance. But if poor performance is the criteria, somebody should ask me, what has happened to the Ministry of Education in the last 5 years that does not justify poor performance? Ask yourself this question. In all the WAEC results, Ghana does better than Nigeria consistently. ask yourself this way. In the before 2003, I'm trying to be sure of the exact date, before 2003 and 2017, there was no ASU strike for 3 years. Between 2017 and now, there's been ASU strike for almost every year. 9 months last year, they have threatened this week. What has happened to ministries like health, where resident doctors have made strike going on an annual issues? So my question is, it's difficult to not specifically target the institutions and the Ministry of Education, but the Ministry of Education, the Federal Ministry of Education, is not doing enough to hold people accountable. Let me tell you what will shock you. 4 years ago, there were over 200,000 illegal admissions in Nigeria.
Wow.
Illegal admissions in Nigerian institutions, over 200,000. Not one vice chancellor was sanctioned or fired. Not one rector was fired. Nobody in Jamb lost his job because of that. We have been reducing the number, and gratefully so, we have been reducing the number of illegal admission. And the Ministry of Education has this data. So I'm not quoting, I'm not plucking figures. I'm telling you the reality of it. So, and that's part of why I've always argued that there's a need for us to really have a conversation. Do you really need Jamb? I mean, because if you have a Jamb and then you are still having 200,000 illegal admission. Don't forget, the number of people that wrote the exam was 1.6 million and 200 illegal admissions out of a total 600,000 admissions. Already shows you that there's a problem with that thing called Jamb. Do we still need Jamb with what has happened? Has Jamb been effective to ensure that we don't have illegal admission? Don't forget their name, Jamb, joint admission. I told you yesterday they refused to be joint.
Yes.
With the number of illegal admissions, even the A is threatened. So, I say it's no more Jamb, it should be AMP. I'm actually deleting the A too, because the admission is not still effective.
Mr. FAWEHINMI, sorry to interrupt you and your spirited and very passionate delivery, but we have run out of time. Thank you so much for coming, Mr. Yomi FAWEHINMI.